I have a dog by the name of Robo who ate a whole bag of poison.
Though the ship is bad, the anchor holds, though the sails are torn.
So I had a dog by the name of Robo. I still have a dog by the name of Robo. I don't know why I said it like that. I still have a dog by the name of Robo. And it wasn't very long ago, just about a month and a half ago, Miss Susan was in Arkansas with her mother. This was back in December. And I had went to the farm. And Robo, of course, you know the story about him being rehomed at the farm. I went to the farm, and when I opened up the barn door, there was Robo. He was laying in his bed, and at the foot of his bed was a chewed up, empty bag of rat poison. Now, this rat poison is a kind of a leftover from when we first had the farm, and we had a horrible rat problem, and this was before we had any animals or dogs or anything out there. And so in the attic of that old home and that old barn, we had put out some rat bait and some mouse bait to kind of help depopulate a little bit, and also to kind of get the snakes because they'd come in to feed on them. And so I don't even know where this bag of rat poison was. I'm assuming it was on the shelf. How it got knocked off, I don't know, but it was laying in Robo's bed, and it was completely empty. And I'm telling you, I was completely convinced that Robo had eaten this entire bag of rat poison. And I was worried, and I hated to make that phone call to Susan because this was the brain swelling toxin. It's not the warfarin, so there's no antidote for it. And I called her on the phone and I said, Susan, I've got some bad news. I said, I don't know how to tell you, but Robo's eating an entire bag of rat poison. I don't know how he got it. I don't know where it come from. But he was laying in his bed and it was all chewed up and all the poison was gone. And so, you know, he seemed all right. He seemed like he was fine. And Susan and I said, well, you know, there's really not much we can do for him. So I gave him some antidote. When I say antidote, I gave him some activated charcoal just to make sure that if he had any left in his belly, he might pass it out real quick and stuff. And for 3 days, we worried and worried and worried. Every text message, every phone call was, is Robo okay? How's Robo doing? Is Robo feeling all right? And so I didn't know exactly, how to tell her that he was great because I was expecting him to be dead at any minute, but he wasn't. He was fine. And every day we just kept going on and on, worried and worried and worried and worried and worried about him. And see, that's the thing about us and the relationships with our people. We can tell ourselves that what I'm doing only affects me. But that's not true. There are people who love us all around us, and the actions that we take affect them as well. And before we do something foolish, before we go out and, for me, example, many years ago, I wanted to have a 444 lever action 1971 model rifle. I couldn't afford it. That was $600. I could have went out and spent $600, but we wouldn't have had money for food. And so before I bought that gun, which I was in my 50s before I ever could afford that rifle, and I was fortunate to buy one, I would weigh the consequences of buying that gun versus feeding my family, and I always chose them first. The Bible says in Proverbs 1:8, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother. For they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy neck." There is no such thing as this only affects me. That's simply not true. Whether you are struggling with alcohol, drugs, pornography, and those are the big ones. But of course, you can talk about gambling. You can talk about excessive spending, excessive flirting, excessive foul language. I mean, we could go on with all sorts of thievery, cheating on your taxes. I mean, it just goes on and on. The list just goes on and on. We could talk about all these things, but they don't just affect the person who committed them. It doesn't just affect us. It affects everyone around us. It affects our family, our friends, and those that love us. And there are consequences to those things. Before we read a poem by Mr. Foley, I want you to take a minute and consider the fact that God has blessed us to seek after righteousness. And when we do that, He will bless us. Okay? Now, it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or don't believe in God, whether you're faithful or non-faithful. The 10 Commandments will not harm you in any way. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not commit idolatry. Those things benefit us, and they also benefit those around us. Mr. James W. Foley wrote a poem called "Drop a Pebble in the Water." Drop a pebble in the water, just a splash and it is gone, but there's 100 ripples circling on and on and on, spreading from the center, flowing out onto the sea, and there is no way of telling where the end is going to be. Drop an unkind word or careless, in a minute you forget, but there's little waves a-flowing and there's ripples circling yet. And perhaps in some sad heart, a mighty wave of tears you've stirred and disturb a life once happy ere you've dropped that unkind word. Drop a word of cheer and kindness, just a flash and it is gone, but there's 100 ripples circling on and on and on, bearing hope and joy and comfort on each splashing, dashing wave, till you wouldn't believe the volume of the one kind word you gave. James W. Foley. Today I look at Robo and I'm amazed at what a dog eating rat poison, supposedly eating rat poison, can teach us. God bless you, Hidden Well farmers. Take care for Reflections Friday. Have a wonderful day.